Chapter 4. The beast I'd seen in the mountains' memories waited outside. I couldn't see it, but I could sense it. I was aware, somehow, of its eyes following me as I stepped outside. I went to the castle my troupe had been staying in. There was nothing left of the others. Shinsplint, Looker, Lookout, Hops, Tasteless, all dead. Blood coated the walls like thrown paint, while loose pieces of skin and fragments of bone lay strewn across the ground. The acrid smell of rotting intestines and their contents filled the air like a fog. I ignored the carnage as I grabbed my pack, what few supplies I could carry, and left. The beast followed me. I could only tell because the wind shifted when it moved. It had no discernible weight. Its footsteps did not shake the ground, yet it was at least 40 or 50 feet tall. I wondered if it were the wind itself, or perhaps some manifestation of the mountain. It didn't matter. If it wanted, it could kill me without any resistance. I don't know why it let me walk out. It followed me to the edge of the valley, and then into the bitter cold. I didn't stop, and I didn't look back. Night fell, and the light turned to pitch. I kept walking in spite of the steep slope of the mountain. Better that I stumble and careen to my death than be killed by the presence behind me. I walked for 3 days. I don't know at what point that thing left, and I don't know how I didn't collapse. When I finally stopped to sit, I was far enough down the mountain there wasn't snow anymore, but it was still cold. The blanket I'd grabbed from the castle did nothing to alleviate the chill. I drank just enough from my canteen and ate just enough supplies from my pack to keep me going. I slept and continued on. It took me 3 weeks to reach the bottom of the range and enter the Casparian undulates. My mind recovered somewhat, and as it did, my pace slowed, and doubts crept in. Had any of it been real? Or had it been a dream? My companions were gone and dead. That was all the evidence I could use to justify that I wasn't insane. I had seen something in those mountains, something I wasn't supposed to. In spite of my blackened past, I'd been spared by the Four. For what purpose, I couldn't fathom. Maybe it had been a fluke. Maybe they'd winked at a fool. Days passed. I remained at the foothills of the mountains. When I looked in their direction, I could sense that thing. It eagerly waited to see if I would try and return. If I did, I knew its hand wouldn't be stayed again. I stayed on the edge of the mountains all the same. If Chief was on his way, I would meet him. We'd figure out what to do after that. I didn't need to worry about food. There was good hunting in the undulates, rabbit, squirrel. It wasn't much, but it was fresh. A month passed, then 2. Reality set in. Chief wouldn't be coming. I'd wondered when we'd parted ways if he would return. We lived as we did out of solemn duty, yet duty could only carry one so far. When we'd formed the Wanderlax and attracted all manner of dredge, we'd worried if we were doing the right thing. Our convictions, embedded in foundation like stone, had cracked and crumbled over the years. We'd worried less about right and wrong and more about surviving, something we'd never intended to do. He'd hated his life, same as I hated mine. Chief's loyalties shifted from our initial goal to his men as our promises faded. The presence of others kept him anchored like a weighted chain around his ankle. We'd all been forged together as a promise to never abandon one another, and without the forgings, he didn't have to come back. I imagined he would be halfway into Fiel by now. The thought tore me in half. I was sad, for I was alone for the first time in nearly 11 years. I was happy because he'd been able to escape. Which emotion took me depended on the day. I stayed in my camp a week longer, contemplating what to do. In the end, I decided to return east and build the Wanderlax anew. Chief may have abandoned our purpose, but I could not. I would never abandon it, even if my memories of it were hazy by design. I didn't make it far. I was halfway out of the undulates when I was set upon by a band of horsemen. Escape wasn't an option. I knelt upon the ground and waited for them to cleave me in two, but death didn't come. Instead, the band surrounded me. "Blessings of the Four," the lead horseman said. I recognized his voice, and my chest tightened. I kept my face neutral. Of course, it had to be him. "Sitter of the Wanderlax, we were wondering when you would turn up. Where's the rest of your friends?" "Dead." "Oh, really?" The horseman dismounted. "I think you're lying. Do you know what we do to liars in Ophelia's duchy?" "I don't. I've been away for a while." The lead horseman grimaced. "We fill them with nails. Now," he pulled his sword halfway out of its sheath, "do you want to tell me the truth?" "They're dead," I said again. This time I explained what had happened. I expected them to interrupt, but they listened with rapture. Not a single word spoken until I'd finished. Some of the men looked spooked. "Captain Munger, I think he's telling the truth." "You really believe a tall tale like that? A hidden valley? A creature that couldn't be seen? He's covering for his friends." Despite Munger's words, he looked as shaken as the others. Yet, as captain, he had to maintain his composure. His voice was even when he spoke. He'd always been like that, brave, courageous, a natural leader. His fame in the duchy had spread far and wide. Much of the populace spoke of the orphan boy that had risen to the rank of captain. He was like a living legend, a man ripped straight from the storybook of heroes. When I'd known him, he'd been far less and far more at the same time. "But couldn't you feel the chill while he was speaking?" another of the horsemen said. A few others murmured in agreement. For the first time since being caught, I had an inkling I might survive. "Come on, men." Munger shook his head. "The Wanderlax are hiding in those mountains right now, biding their time, waiting for their chief to come back. He invented the story about the beast to spook us." "It doesn't sound like it," one of the horsemen said. "Nix, one day you'll be able to tell when someone is lying," Munger said. He looked at me. "If that valley exists, you are going to lead us to it." I shook my head. "I will lead you to the foot of the mountain. I won't go farther." Munger raised his blade to my neck. "Not even on fear of death?" "Execute me now. It will be more pleasant here than at the hands of that creature." Another murmur went out among the horsemen. I suppose a bluff like that wouldn't have worked under normal circumstances, but I meant every word. They could tell. Munger could, too. If he'd been smart, he would have killed me right then and there to spare himself any trouble. That was the problem with good men. They didn't think in terms of troublesome or not. They thought in terms of right or wrong, and Munger could not help that he had always chosen to be a good man. He leaned in. "You swear you're telling the truth?" "I do." "What do you swear on?" I didn't believe in any religious figure enough to swear on them, and what I did believe in, I could not say in front of him. That wouldn't be the answer Munger wanted to hear. "I swear on the heir of my house." "What? Are you descended from some kind of noble line?" Munger scoffed and remounted his horse. "It's good enough, I suppose. Load him up. We're taking him with us." The horseman produced some rope, and I was bound. They set me atop one of the larger horses, behind one of their smaller riders. "Don't fall off and hit your head." "At least let me wrap my arms around you." I protested. The ground looked far away and my vision spun. I'd never done well with heights, and I didn't like horses either. They found a way to throw me off every time I tried to ride one. The horseman chuckled. Maybe after you treat me to a warm dinner. The horsemen maneuvered themselves into formation. Munger called for the squad to be at the ready and raised his arm. I squeezed the horse with my thighs as tightly as I could and hoped, through some miracle, I didn't fall and snap my neck. Munger sliced his hand down. The horses all reared back, but instead of breaking into a gallop, they trotted forward as one. I blinked, confused, and looked at the man riding beside me. He laughed at my stricken expression. Thought we were going to go bounding off into the sunset, did you? The rest of the group laughed. It's impossible to run horses through the undulates. There's too much uneven terrain and holes. The horses will snap their legs. But you ran at me. The ground was level enough, and we wanted to scare you. It worked. Consider me scared. More scared than you were of the beast in the mountains? Munger called from the front. Not even a little. I came to learn the horseman found me entirely by chance. Word of the Wonderlack's flight had reached nearly every city on the continent. Ophelia had sent letters and messages to every lord and province, promising a handsome reward for information on our whereabouts. When none was forthcoming, we devolved into something of a myth. Some people said we had the ability to disappear into thin air, others said we had never been more than phantoms. Hearing the tall tales brightened my spirits a little. Ophelia had grown desperate. The Fiellians granting her the duchy was conditional on her ridding the area of bandits and the capture of the Wonderlacks. Failure meant execution at the hands of Vagar, and he was known for brutality to rival the bandits themselves. All the other roving bands had been killed or imprisoned, save ours. And we were perhaps the most infamous and most desired. She'd sent over 100 men to find us. I had to admit, the effort expended to capture or kill us, combined with the stories of our grand and mysterious escape, made me feel more valuable than I ever had before. Over 100 men sent to find us, and it just so happened to be Munger that found me. I didn't know if fate was cruel or had a sense of humour to thrust us together again. He would not remember, and I only had the vaguest recollection. His lack of memory and my absence of details was purposeful. As we travelled, I couldn't help but wonder what happened to Chief. With every grandmother and dog on the continent looking for us, he must have been spotted at least once. It explained why he had taken so long to find a forger. I asked for news of him, and though my captors were amicable in our conversations, it was clear they had no inclination to share anything other than pertinent information. I could only pray the beast in the mountains left Chief alone if he made his way to the valley. Thinking back on it, I should have left him a note. But I had been in a trance after my vision in the mountain cave. All I could think of at the time was escaping. When we camped for the evening each night, I looked at the dark shadows of the mountains against the sky, and it was like I could feel the beast staring at me. Travel continued slowly. The horsemen kept me well fed and allowed me to sit at the campfire in the evenings. I asked why they treated me so kindly. "You're the most famous of the Wonderlacks," Munger answered. "Everyone knows about Sitter." "They do?" I was genuinely surprised. The other horseman nodded. "Anyone that survived Wonderlack cruelty has survived because of you. The slaves you sold told us how you made life more bearable." I hummed. Relieving our prisoners of unhelpful memories had been more a matter of practicality than kindness. Unhappy slaves were more likely to attempt an escape. Happy slaves didn't like their situation, but could find it palatable for a time. "Why did you turn to banditry?" one of the horsemen asked. "It's a boring story, long and sad too." "It can't be more boring than sitting around doing nothing," Munger said. Hellet might be interested in other things, though. He goes to sleep every night with his hands in his pants. Hellet flushed. It was one time! Laughter shook the camp. I joined in out of principle. When it died down, the attention returned to me. Are you going to tell us or no? I'd rather not. Why? It's a story I'd rather forget, and one I'd already forgotten. They understood. We all had memories too painful to speak out loud. Most people were fortunate enough to forget over time. The pain faded, and so did the details, until all that remained was a vague feeling and a haze. Memorists were different. We couldn't forget. Every minute, every second of my life could be recalled with a simple draw of Imperia. Yet there were ways to prevent any idle thoughts from entering our minds. Memories could not be erased, but they could be locked away. And I had buried my past so deep into my soul, it would take a concerted effort to unlock it. I was aware of the gaps, of course, but if I did not think on them with concentrated effort, I could not remember. Munger's presence threatened to open that lock. They say you remember how many people you've killed. Is it true? Munger asked. It is. I ladled more soup into my bowl and lamented tasteless cooking. It was far better than the slop before me. Are you interested in how many I've personally killed, or the Wanderlaks in general? Both, the group responded. I've personally killed 56. I slipped up a spoonful. The Wanderlaks count is 879, but the toll is higher than that. Each man among them had a body count before they'd joined. The horsemen grew quiet. I don't know what they had been expecting to hear. Something lower? Something higher? Maybe they thought the number a bluff. One excused himself to the bathroom. Another cleared his throat. You're not bothered by it. They all blur together after the first dozen. For me, it was a lie, but I was unique as a memorist. I could not forget anything. The others had confirmed the deaths became less and less impactful as time went on. The more you killed, the easier it became. In your line of work, you've probably killed as many as I. We kill criminals, Munger said. Men that are guilty before the fore. It's not the same. I shrugged. All men are guilty before the gods. Doesn't the holy word say the wicked are punished by the wicked? And are the people you've killed wicked? A horseman asked with a hard tone. I didn't know his name, but it was easy to keep track of him. He disliked me more than the rest. I thought of all the children that I'd killed. There were only 6 that I'd personally seen to, but many more among the Wanderlaks. Each of their faces passed before my eyes, ranging from infants to young men and women. Bile rose in my throat, but I shoved it down. We'd killed them as a matter of practicality. It was harder to take care of children than adults. That's all there was to it. I wiped some soup from the corner of my mouth. Some. Munger snorted. And you're fine being wicked? We all have our roles allotted. I've played mine the best I can. All men have a choice. Munger rose from his seat. You could have been something better. Yes, I could have. But I'd been young and naive when I'd embarked on this journey, and nothing could stop it now. Its course would have to be run. Seeing Munger reminded me it had all been worth it. I finished the rest of my meal and indicated for the men to tie me up. The atmosphere changed. I sensed what goodwill I'd earned over the past few weeks of travel had evaporated. The way they made sure the ropes dug into my wrist was another indication. The next few meals I ate by myself, under guard, and away from the others. The weeks dragged on. The horsemen softened, and I returned to my place around the campfire. Each of them was careful not to ask about my past or about the Wanderlax. Our conversations were sanitized as a result. They lost their way thrice on the way to Timewinders, and I helped them find the correct path each time. "Why do you do that?" Munga asked after the second time. "Do what?" "Help us get our bearings," Munga said. "There's nothing but a noose waiting for you at the end of this." "My neck is lonely." Munga shook his head and said nothing more on the matter. I didn't bother explaining. Men like him that lived within the walls of order couldn't understand. Death became a constant companion when one was an outlaw. She, on her pale white horse and with a giant scythe eager to reap, hovered in the periphery of your vision. If you were quick or foolhardy enough to glance, sometimes you caught a glimpse as she eagerly waited to harvest what was hers. I'd accepted an ignominious death a long time ago. Whether my life ended with a snap of a rope, a fall of a sword, with arrows in my back, or at the bottom of a ditch, it made no difference. The end result was always going to be the same. Munga thought I rode to an abrupt and early execution. I saw it as the natural and inevitable end to the life I'd chosen. He spoke once more on the journey. When his other men were asleep, he knelt beside me. Sleep covered me like a heavy blanket that he ripped away with words. "Sitter!" I ignored his first plea. It came again. I roused myself and sat with a yawn and rubbed my eyes. "What do you need, Captain?" Munga eyed me curiously. He didn't speak for several seconds. My annoyance grew. The night wore on, and with it, time I could have used to sleep. As I shifted to lay down once more, he spoke. "Your face changes in the night. Sometimes it's a man with red hair. Other times it's a woman with silver. The men are afraid you carry a demon from the mountains." A surge of fear ran through me. I stifled it and maintained control. "I can promise I'm not carrying a demon." "Then why does your face change?" Munga asked. "Your hair goes from brown to red to white. Why?" "It is business of my own." How desperately I wanted to tell him the truth. It would have ruined everything, but the temptation gnawed at me like a hungry man gnawed at bones. My memories threatened to spill out. I shoved them back down with my Imperia. "Will it cause trouble for me and my men?" No. He let me return to sleep. I resolved to be more careful in the night. I hadn't needed to worry about the Wanderlax. We'd all been strange there, and our quirks had grown familiar. Now I was among strangers, and that meant distrust and paranoia. We came to the end of the Casparian undulates, but we maintained our slow pace. Munga would have been within his right to press us into a run, but he didn't. I wondered if it was his way of giving me more time. I didn't bother to ask, and he didn't bother to tell me. Timewinders peeked over the horizon. It had been 8 months since I'd last seen it, but it already looked foreign. The city wall had been stripped down and new construction projects, homes, stores, and more had sprung up in its place. The old mansion at the top of the hill had also been demolished and replaced with a frame. The other older buildings remained. "Ophelia's put her money to use," I said. "The Fielians gave her the ransom of a small kingdom," one of the horsemen said, "and she's spending it as though she were a large one." I couldn't imagine Ophelia doing anything else. "Welcome to your final resting place." Munga gestured to the gallows as we passed. They were set near where the former entrance to the town had been. 4 bodies swung in the breeze with varying levels of decay. One squirmed, still alive. That happened sometimes. The fall didn't snap the spine, and you were left until your chest was so compressed that breathing was the same as squeezing thick, muddy clay through a tube. I glanced at the mountains, and a chill ran across my shoulders. There were worse places and ways to die.